circle. Okay, now shine that light about a third of the way across the diameter. Okay, and you're going to see that the light illuminates everything in the circle, the whole Earth that you're depicting on the wall. It shines on some things to a large degree and other things in a lesser degree, but light shines on everything. Now, if there were mountains on the other side of the Earth that were high, the light would be shining on them more. You'd always see Mount Everest. You'd always see Mount McKinley, because the light coming from the other side of the Earth would always shine on it. Now, they have a variety of different sizes for the sun and the moon, and saying they're within this dome is interesting. It's going to play into some of the things we're going to talk about in a little while. But bear with me, okay, because it took a lot to put this together, and it's a long thing. But let's look at Joshua's long day. Okay, now that's found, of course, in the book of Joshua. And it talks about Joshua was in a battle north of present-day Jerusalem, and he really wanted to win this battle. And so what he did is, I'm assuming that he prayed. It doesn't say that he prayed, but he got up, and the sun was starting to rise. And he looked at the sun, and he said, "Sun, stand still." And he said to the moon, "Stand still." Okay, and they did. They didn't move. Okay, they didn't rise or set. And this went on for quite a long time. And if you look at the math, the visible day could have been as much as 30 hours long. Okay, and then after the sun started to move, it would be even longer. Okay, so you got the sun coming up, it's stopping, him fighting the battle. And back then they fought like men, hand to hand, spear to spear, sword to sword. It didn't end in 10 minutes like it does now with rifles. Anyway, so they're having this battle, and for hours, if not like 3/4 of the day or a whole day. And back then, they didn't fight at night, so the minute the sun went down, two camps would separate from each other, and then they'd come back the next day. So Joshua just wanted to finish it off. So he asked the sun, told the sun and the moon to stop, and God listened to him and stopped the sun and the moon. Yahweh did. Okay. Now Joshua's long day presents us with problems, especially if you're a flat earther. Again, they present a model of a flat earth where the sun and the moon are within the dome and much smaller than the sun and the moon in the real world, on the spherical earth. As I mentioned earlier, the flat earth scenario, the sun would always shine some degree on every part of the earth. Now, there's one big problem with that in regard to Joshua's long day, and that problem is that there are traditions of people from around the globe, yes, I said globe, not the plate, that are that are opposite of Israel, on the opposite side of the earth, and they tell of a long night. Let's look at some of these, and I'm going to murder some of these names, so bear with me. Now, in North America, the Ojibways tell of a long night without any light. Now, no light, which means that it wasn't a flat Earth moon, because you would get some kind of ambient light from that. Okay, the Wyandot Indians told missionary Paul Lejeune of a long night. The Dogrib Indians of the Northwest tell of a day when the sun was caught at noon and instantly became dark. Okay. The Omahas say that once the sun was caught by a rabbit trap who checked his traps at the break of dawn, presumably before sunrise. This may have been Hezekiah's sign instead. And again, we have the Bungie Indians from Lake Winnipeg area of Canada also tell of a long night. And if you want to look this up, the source is geocentricity.com/astronomy_of_Bible. And you can go from there and find it out. Now, also at the same website, they talk about South and Central America. So turning to the south, we find Central and South America similarly experienced a long night. The annals of, I was never good with Mexican gods. Chuatitan, the Mexican Indians tell of a long night. The Aztecs wrote of an extended period of time when the sun did not rise. According to their legend, there had been no sun for many years. A little bit of elaboration on that, I guess. It says, so the conclave of the gods was called Teotihuacan, and it was decided that One of them should offer himself as a sacrifice, that once again the world might have a son. S-U-N. The sacrifice gods had disappeared from the brazier's flames, but as there was no sign of the sun, the remaining wondered when it would first appear. At long last the sun burst forth, but the sun, despite his brilliant light, did not move. He hung on the edge of the sky, apparently unwilling to begin his appointed task. Now, okay, likewise, in their national book, the Popol Vuh, which translates into the Book of Princes, the Quiche Mayans of Guatemala wrote about the people's reaction to a long night with the following words, okay? The sun did not sleep. They remained standing, and great was the anxiety. Yeah, excuse me, I'm reading it wrong. Forgive me. They did not sleep. They remained standing, and great was the anxiety of their hearts and their stomachs for the coming of the dawn and the day. Oh, if we only could see the rising of the sun. What shall we do now? They talked, but they could not calm their hearts, which were anxious for the coming of the dawn. Okay, now let's see. Let's look at the sun, okay, and how it disproves a flat earth. As I mentioned earlier, if the earth was flat and the sun was only 3,000 miles or less in elevation, there would be no total darkness, right? There would be no total darkness anywhere in the world. There would be times of light when the sun was not visible, but they would be placed by twilight conditions at best on the other side of the disk. Also, if there was a dome over the earth, then when the sun's light would reflect off the dome, and it would create a condition of perpetual light all over the earth. Let's not forget that according to the theory of some flat earth proponents, the stars that we see now, are you sitting down, folks? Okay, sit down, because you might laugh so hard you'll fall. The stars that we see at night are projected reflection from the center of the earth flashed upon the dome from a hole at the North Pole. Yeah, you heard it here, maybe first. Oh, and by the way, the North Pole would not be the North Pole anymore, because it would be smack dab in the center of the disk, according to the model. One also has to ask if there would be any reason to refer to north or south or east or west, either, because since all the designations depend on the North and South Pole. Remember, the South Pole is now the rim of the plate, and the North Pole is dead smack center in the middle of the plate. Now, let's not fail to mention the high clouds. There are times when thunderheads reach 65 to 70,000 feet or more in height. If the sun was at an elevation of only 3,000 miles above the Earth's surface, then surely the sun on the other side of the disk would reflect on the tops of the thunderstorm clouds. I mean, my goodness, you got 70,000 feet. Something that's happening far away. You ever see a sunset when there's lots of clouds? The clouds are always lit up, even a long time after the sun is set. So that kind of proves that if the sun was circling the plate, so to speak, just like this theory is circling the drain, then the light that was coming from the other side of the plate, or disk, or whatever you want to call it, would shine on the clouds. Okay. Okay. So now, how about airplanes flying 5 or 6 miles above the Earth if we had a flat Earth? If the sun was really only 3,000 miles high, then the airplanes up as high as they go would be bathed in perpetual sunshine. Again, have you ever seen the sun go down, but you see planes flying up there and they're fully illuminated by the light? Probably what it would be like. That means that all the darkness that I saw when we flew to Israel 2 years ago wasn't really there, nor was the sun that rose from the horizon during our flight. Now that brings us to another point, that being the sunrise over the horizon. Now, if the sun, according to the flat earthers, really circled around the Earth about halfway along the disk diameter at the elevation of 3,000 miles, then there could be no sunrise, right? Because the sunrise comes over the horizon. Now there's not going to be a horizon anymore because it's a plate, not a globe. So when the sun finally did arrive, where your location would be on the flat Earth, it's bright in its brightness. According to their model, it would just appear on the left, make an arch across the sky and disappear on the right-hand side, or on the opposite direction, depending if you were standing looking north toward the hole that is supposed to be the pole, or south facing away from it, looking down towards the Antarctic wall. Remember, there is no longer any north or south. Okay. Another thing that flat Earth proponents cannot show is how eclipses fit into the scheme of things. Again, let's look at the model that I talked about a few minutes ago, that they so graciously permit us to look at. According to them, the Earth and the Moon are both making a circuit around the disk at the same or close to the same altitude, so the Moon would never come between the Sun and the Earth, nor could the Earth come between the Sun and the Moon. Things like solar and lunar eclipses could never exist if this model was reality. Speaking of the Moon, it would never set, because only 3,000 miles above the Earth it would be constantly visible. In addition to that, since the Moon would be visible from both sides of the world, when it is on one side showing its familiar face, the people on the other side of the Moon, or the disk, would see what we normally call the dark side of the Moon that we supposedly never see. Now, here's another thing to mull over. If the Moon shines on the Sun, if the Moon shines on the Sun and the back side of the Moon isn't being lit by the Sun, then would the Moon cast a shadow on the dome? Something to think about. There would be a shadow that would go across the sky, because there would be like an eclipse on the dome. Interesting. Yet another problem that arises with this model: if the Sun is inside this dome, well, what constituents make up the Sun? Okay, if their model is correct, then the Sun could not be an atomic fission machine that we're told that it is, because its harmful rays that the Sun possesses would not be filtered out by our atmosphere, which we know happens. Any creature living on the Earth would be harmed by X-rays, gamma rays, and even cancerous ultraviolet rays. Now, this is a big deal, and it's not brought into light in the flat Earth scenario by the proponents of the flat Earth. Okay, a lot to think about. So what is the Sun made of if it's inside the dome? Just something to think about. Now, is there a dome above the Earth, really? Okay, so the flat Earth scenario says that there's a dome that covers the whole Earth. I don't argue that there once was such a structure around the global Earth, but it was destroyed and was part of the cause of the global flood during Noah's time. It's pretty well accepted by biblical archaeologists that study the antediluvian era, that means before the flood, that the Earth was once a garden. That pretty much is well accepted by these archaeologists, and that there was waters above the waters. That's what the Scripture says. Now, was there a vapor of ice that surrounded the whole Earth? Many contend there was. Many contend it might have been a water vapor barrier, too. Every year, fossils of tropical plants and animals are found at both the Arctic and Antarctic regions. And now there's more proof that every year to show us that the antediluvian world, that is the world before the flood, had a worldwide tropical environment with an increased atmospheric pressure probably, which would explain why the insects got so large and plant fossils around the world got so large too. Before they became fossils, that is. The important part of this, for this discussion anyway, is that the vapor barrier or ice shield caused uniformity in temperature and environment. If there was a dome that covered the whole disk of the world, then one would expect that temperatures worldwide would be relatively the same, probably nice and warm. These conditions would mean that it would be impossible for there to be snow and miles-deep glaciers at the poles and in many of the higher mountains of the temporal regions. Also, the uniformity of the temperatures would mean that the chance of violent storms such as hurricanes would be virtually non-existent, seeing that the variation in temperatures and air pressures cause winds and storms. One has to ask if there would be any rain if there was a dome above the Earth. Rain happens when clouds form and humid air is carried to the upper atmosphere where it condenses into water droplets or ice crystals. And